A dream, I guess, is about the way you've got to say it. It was a dream. It built and it built and it built within our minds. As we went around and talked to people throughout the state, we could see that they caught the same dream. I would like to say this, though, in retrospect, that at least in my boldest ambitions, I would never anticipated that this cattle drive would turn out like it has. Nothing we'd been involved with had so much divine intervention as this cattle drive has. This is something that was meant to happen.
I think it was something magic about the idea early on that caught the imagination of the people. That when we started thinking about the reality of it, you know, we're talking about something that was a fantasy in a way. People talking about the life of a cowboy 100 years ago. And everybody wants to be a cowboy when they're a little kid. That's a fantasy. And we had to bring that to reality.
When you consider the magnitude of this thing, it's easy enough to see why people could be skeptical that it could be put together and made to work.
There's a certain amount of planning that has to be done, and where we were influencing traffic for such a great distance around Billings and Roundup, we had to do a traffic analysis and a traffic plan, and that involved, of course, trying to do a lot of calculations and time motion studies and so forth on how fast a cow might move or a herd of cattle might move, and how fast the wagons could move across country as opposed to on the highway. And that was quite an involved process, and we made it work pretty much according to the time schedule that we had designed in advance of the project.
We're talking about a modern day cattle drive, and essentially it was a lot more than a cattle drive. It was a collection of several thousand people, horses, cattle, and moving them from Roundup to Billings. It was dealing with government agencies, landowners, getting water, feed, dealing with all of the participants around the state through their county people. It was just, it was all those kind of things. You never know when you plan something if it's going to happen exactly like you plan it.
Cattle were staged at our place, and they were put together in that meadow, and it just seemed like every day it filled up more and more with just beautiful horned cattle of all colors and descriptions.
We wound up with a lot more longhorns than I expected. We probably wound up with around 70% longhorns, which made a very colorful herd, a lot more so than I ever anticipated.
We had quite a lot of problems with leases. People were afraid that we would ruin their properties. The first day out, we had to go about 9.5 miles to accomplish 6 miles just to go around the people that had this negative feeling about the cattle drive.
The cattle, they left from the staging area and went through a scenic area to the south. It gave Jay and his drovers a chance to get those cattle lined out, get them halfway trail broke before they got onto the highway and around people.
That first morning, when we started out with them, the longhorns was wanting to run. That's all they had on their mind, especially the ones in the lead. And it's really a good thing, fortunate that we had a lot of good hands in the front, because they was wanting to run over the top of us all the way. And the reason we couldn't stop them is because we'd have to mill them, and we couldn't do that in the timber. If you stop them, then they'd start spreading out through the timber, so we just had to go with it.
We had a fantastic parade setting down Roundup. The main street was wall-to-wall people, even on the tops of the stores. They were cheering and crying, and the longhorn cattle were going down the main street, and then all these wagons and riders came through town. And Roundup's kind of a small town, and to put that kind of a parade through there, it lasted some 2 hours or better. And, you know, it was just a fantastic experience.
They were of all walks of life. And I remember one day I was riding along with a couple guys from Canada. These are both fellows from Canada. One, as I recall, was 73, and the other one never got his age, but he was a little bit older. And I was asking them their comments, because a lot of times these old cowboys, we'd had the feeling that some of these old cowboys thought this is a Hollywood deal, and they didn't want to be a part of it. And I was talking to these fellas, and they just made no bones about it. They said, this is absolutely the best thing we've ever been on. We wouldn't have missed it for the world. I just wish my grandkids were here to see it. Some of the families, and they were families, came with their wagons just like they had, well, just like they originally settled this country. There were 46 states represented. The ones that foreign countries that I met personally, I know there was at least 5 foreign countries. I met people there from Sweden, from France, from England, from Germany, from Taiwan, from Japan. Well, I guess that's more than 5 already, but they were just from all over.
Well, then the second day, we had to go down the highway that one day. And then, of course, there's not much you can do on a highway except hold them up. And that's what we had to do. We had 15 guys in front to hold them up because we had to go down a real steep hill on the highway. that if we didn't hold them up, they would have got away from us, and they were just wanting to run over us all the way. The next day, at 30 Mile, then we got out in open country, which really was the kind of country that we should have been in all the time, is open country, and it was in the area where we could control them and spread them out, and it's just the kind of country that you can control them a lot better and do what we wanted to do with them. So they trailed real good that day. I tell you, I just can't say enough about my cowboys. They were the best bunch of cowboys that I've ever worked with, and probably the best of that many that have ever been put together in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
The moon was bright as a reading light, a letter from an old friend back home. He asked me, why do we ride for the money? Why do we rope short pay? We ain't getting nowhere and we're losing our share. Well, they all must be crazy out there, 'cause they ain't never seen the northern lights. They ain't never seen a hog on the wing. They ain't never seen spring at the great divide. No, they never heard old Camp Cookie sing.
This wagon here is from Canada, and that's been on the trail for the last 40 years, the way I understand. And they've used it in cattle drives and roundup. We're trying to stay the old ways, and that's the way it goes. A lot of times you have a hard time getting wood on the prairie, but most of the time there's always some you can scare up a little wood.
It was hectic in the mornings, you know. We had breakfast at 5, and to get everything packed up and in the wagons and get the teams hooked up and be gone by 7. You know, it was pretty hectic.
Being a cowboy is a way of life. They like the freedom of the open land and sleeping out underneath the stars, and telling their stories.
And the true cowboy is not non-existent, but really pretty scarce. There's something about the history there. They're hardworking. They're independent. They want to be the best cowboy. They want to be the best bronc rider. They want to be the best roper. And they are hardworking. They're very devoted. They're very loyal to the outfits they're with.
It's kind of funny, you know, we go and watch a movie and it's all peaches and cream and pretty nice. But I guess life is kind of that way too. We sure have our hard parts, but that's kind of what we remember, the snowstorms and the hard parts, cattle diseases. I put in a lot of springs working cattle and a lot of hours in the saddle. In fact, last winter it hit 40 below and we're calving. And if you weren't right there and take care of them little babies, they just freeze right down and die.
Our lifestyle was like 18 hours a day. Sometimes it was 25 hours a day. And I mean, the hours was long and the trails were dusty. You had to be tough and you had to be able to stand going without water. But it's Montana, and it's a place I love.
Their horses were their closest friend. They were with them day and night. They were part of them. If without the horses, they wouldn't be able to get the cattle across the land.
There was, of course, wranglers for the drovers, but there's also a large group of wranglers with the social herd, and they were pretty much the unsung heroes.
Every day was different. I think the first major thing that we had to do was check those horses in at roundup, and that took 4 or 5 days. We had to tag the horses so they could be identified, and then on Monday morning we had to catch probably 2,000 loose horses and tie them up so those people could get them and we could get out of there and make it through the parade and roundup, which started at 10 o'clock. After that, we kind of, I guess, rolled with the punches. There was a new deal that came up every day. We'd either have to find a different place to put them because of wire or hazards or one thing or another. We just kind of had to take care of things as they came.
The first night out, they put them in a pasture, and there were some that caused some problems, and they went to move them to another pasture farther away. It was dark at this particular time, and they crossed the highway, and they spilled some of those horses, and they went back to the original camp, staging area, which was at that time probably 12 miles away. Those cowboys spent that whole night, and they got every one of those horses back.
We had to get up early and get those horses in and put them in the rope corrals so that the people that were riding them could catch the horses and, of course, get ready to get out of camp. And then after that, we just we trail our loose horses and go to the next camp. And then in the afternoon, while we were busy figuring out some things, about what was going to happen the next day. That was my part of it. The majority of those people were more or less involved just in taking care of the horses, but I always had to be out ahead of them, figure out what was going to happen next.
There was some question about whether everybody could go on the parade the last day because we had to get through town within a certain period of time, and there were just too many to do it.
Stovall, this is communications.
I don't think there's ever been probably 2,500 cattle taken through 35, 40,000 people before. So you're always apprehensive when you do something like that for the first time. You can just feel the tension in the air. The horses are tense, and all the guys are tense. It's still dark, and we had to sit around and wait for daylight. Come on, baby.
We thought that there'd be no problem because so many people would be so tired that a lot of them would just automatically drop out, but not a one of them did.
The parade was so impressive that it just made the whole thing worthwhile. I had no idea that people were going to be like, that receptive. I was almost cried, and I thought I was the only one until I talked to everybody and found out they were all the same. It's just, you go down the street and they'd holler, well done, and happy birthday, Montana. And, oh, it was just emotional, it really was.
just before we started with that herd, I had all the cowboys come around me, and I never had cowboys get around so close to me before in my life. They wanted to hear what I had to say. So I told them the main thing is not to get excited if something happened, to not get to running or getting, if the cowboy gets excited, he'll get his horse excited and then get the animals excited, the cattle excited. So I told them to be quiet in case something did happen. And then, like when they were going along the streets, what I was worried about is the cattle going out into the people on each side. We started that lead across there, and there's one big old longhorn steer got a little bit excited, and he got out, almost got into the crowd. But there was a good cowboy there and got him turned. But after he got him started, then they was all right.
The thing I noticed about this cattle drive was all the drovers, they were there to prove that they could put them cattle across this several counties, and we did it.
It's like I told my brother, he's a rancher down in eastern part of Montana. And he said, Bobby, you're a crazy old fool to go on this trip. He said, you know they can't do it. And you know right there's when it sparked me that I was gonna go and do everything I could to make it work, because I knew it could work with the hands that they had, and I wanted to be one of them. So I'm truly pretty proud to have been there.
What I was amazed at is the people's responses. They just seemed to, they treated us as if we was a bunch of soldiers just come back from a victory. I don't know why. I just don't understand it, but I think that maybe what it was is their heritage, a lot of their heritage come out, and they got emotional. A lot of people tears were streaming down their face. And
I felt tears coming to my eyes. Yeah. Lots of tears.
Yeah.
I don't know why the tears were there, but they're still there, them tears.
I had mixed emotions about seeing the cattle drive coming to an end, as well as just the power of the partnerships and the companionships of the man and horses and animals that were all pulling together to make this birthday celebration that the world won't forget.
I'll never forget, and I don't think anybody that was on it will ever forget it.
I've said many, many times I didn't want to live past 100 years old because I didn't like the way the younger generation is doing all that sort of stuff. I told him, I wish I could live to be 150 because I'd like to relate this experience more times than I can in my lifetime.
I feel close to God whenever I'm out here, especially by myself. And to me, it's like this whole area is God's church, and I have a very special feeling about it. But it's just my livelihood. I love the work to the cattle, and it's all I know how to do. And I'd never do anything else.